Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. I just got a new sketchbook through today. I haven't tried this one before, so I thought I might give it a quick test or a quick review on camera. So I'll hold this up to the camera so that you can see it better. This is a Derwent Academy hardcover smooth surface sketchbook A5. Apparently this is acid free, which I believe means the pages shouldn't go yellow over time. 135 GSM, which is the thickness of the paper. 135 actually isn't bad for a sketchbook. And 128 sheets, which is an awful lot, especially considering that it doesn't look that thick. I mean, it's not a bad size, but 128 sheets is a lot. One thing that I do find strange about that though is I ordered a few other sketchbooks as well, like this one, and this is a little bit thicker, but this is 80 sheets. When you look at the thickness of them though, this one is quite a bit. So I have a feeling that this one actually is not 128 sheets. So I'm going to very quickly count these off camera. Okay, so with the magic of editing, I am back. I have counted these. There is not 128 sheets. There is 128 pages or 64 sheets. So unless I'm getting the terminology wrong there, I think that they've written this up wrong. I think they've labelled it wrong. So I'll put links to where I got this in the description box below, but this was only about £7, so it's not bad, but it was even better when I thought there was 128 sheets. You can definitely get cheaper though, but obviously I'm hoping this is relatively good quality for a sketchbook. So other things to know, it obviously comes with a ribbon, or whatever you want to call this kind of elastic ribbon, let's call it, so that you can keep your cover shut. The paper itself is quite smooth. I know this probably doesn't show up very well on camera because how can you show that it's smooth on camera? But yeah, there's not much texture, not much tooth to it. For me, I quite like that, but I know some people like texture. You might also be able to tell that there is like cuts along here, so I'm guessing once you've drawn on these, if you do want to tear them out, you should be able to do quite a good job of that, quite a clean job. Now just going back to the specs here, you can see it's actually for dry media, so graphite and coloured pencils, but seeing as I'm making a video, I'm going to test some other stuff on it anyway. So I've got some different pencils, just regular graphite to test. We've got some coloured pencils, these should all work well. Got some Biros and black inking pens, and then I might even move on to things like watercolors and some copic markers, alcohol markers. To be honest, I don't think it's going to withstand those very well, but let's give it a go. So I'm going to do this in the back of my sketchbook because whilst the sketchbook is intended to be sketchy and potentially messy, I am still in a bad habit of trying to keep mine neat and pristine. One thing to note is this back page doesn't close fully here. Got a bit of a seal to that black bit, if that makes sense. So I'm actually going a page or two from the back, and I'm sticking some scrap paper behind it to test this because I have a feeling it's not going to go well. So first things first, I've got some graphite. I believe this one is just a HB Staedtler mechanical pencil. I mean, there isn't really much to say about that, let's be honest. And then I've also got one that is a softer lead, so you can see this is a lot darker. And then this one is a harder lead, so I'll put H, but it is a 0.3. And the reason I wanted to test this out is actually because it's so thin, when I'm drawing it actually does indent into the page a bit, which doesn't sound like a big issue. However, when you erase over it, I've noticed on some thicker papers you are left with an indent. So I'm just going to erase these lines a little bit to see whether it digs in. So I had to hold this up to my face a little bit closer to check, but it doesn't seem to have indented. I quite like the feel of this for pencil. I love working with graphite, and to me it reminds me of, I don't want to say cheap printer paper, but I really like working with sort of regular cartridge paper, so it is very similar to that. Let's test a Biro on here as well. I don't really know what effect we're going to get from a Biro, and I'm testing these really quickly because I don't want the video to be too long. So it isn't the most thorough test ever. I thought that would push through the page and leave a mark because I put a lot of pressure, but to be honest, not that bad. Yeah, quite nice for Biros as well. And then onto some inking pens. So I've got a few random ones here. This is a Tombow. I don't really use many inking pens, not very often, to actually know much about them. But hopefully this will help some of you guys if you were wondering how well they write on. I'm trying to go over it a little bit to see whether it goes through the page. And so far, no, it doesn't. So this one is a Zig cartoonist. I will put links in the description box below to pretty much all of these supplies, so that if you are interested in any of these, you know where to get them. Just tested a different Tombow there, and this one is the, oh, it's leaking on me apparently. This one is the Pentel Pocket Brush, I think. Brush pen, in case you can't tell. As you can see, I'm not very accurate with these, but again, they do give out quite a lot of ink. You can probably tell. So it's quite a good way to see if that's going to go through the page. I'm deliberately putting quite a lot on. I wouldn't personally use that much. Still doesn't look like it really goes through though. And last of all, out of the inking pens, we've got a Sharpie marker. So I do use these for drawing sometimes, but I figured if any are going to go through the page, it would probably be these. I have noticed as well that this Sharpie does not look anywhere near as dark on this page as some of the other inking pens. I'm not sure if that will show on camera. So Sharpies are permanent markers, so I thought it might go through a little bit more, but maybe not. I can see with the lighting over here, I can see the black a little bit more there, but it still hasn't come through. So far that holds up pretty well actually. Next we've got some Faber-Castell Polychromos. So these are just pencil colours. Obviously these aren't going to go through the page, and I'm not really sure what I'm expecting by testing these, but I just wanted to cover everything whilst I'm recording. So it does look like it gives it a little bit of tooth to the page, a little bit of texture, even though it's quite smooth. But honestly, it's still quite a subtle texture compared to what you get with a lot of coloured pencils. And you could probably flatten it down if you went over it for a while. In fact, let's step it up one. Let's try it with these watercolour pencils so that I can just add a very thin layer of water afterwards. So this should give us a fairly similar effect to the pencil colours, but we're going to touch this up with a little bit of water. I'm deliberately taking the water off so there's not too much on here, so we're starting with a light coat, I guess. Again, I'm not using a particularly nice technique. I'm sure that you guys could correct me on this, but hopefully it gives us an idea of how well the page holds up. It's actually quite a generous amount of water there, probably. So before we take a look at the other side to see how that's going through, whilst that's drying, let's be a bit more risky and see how these ones go on. I genuinely don't even think I've used these before, or maybe for one video once, I'm not sure. Yeah, if you're a watercolourist, you're probably not going to be using this pad anyway, and you're probably going to be applying more layers than me. I am trying to be a little bit heavy-handed, but this is quite thick. There's not tons of water, so I'll keep applying that on. It's actually standing up to it a little bit better from this side than I expected. I think it's starting to bring up the page a little bit now, but I am deliberately kind of doing that. So one final extra bit of water just to really push our luck and wet the page. And whilst that's drying, let's try some Ecoline brush pens. I think these are water-based, so this should really be the same as working with watercolours, but we are covering all bases. So one single layer on its own goes down quite nice. I can see there that it definitely brings up the page a little bit with these. And that is just as I was saying, that a single layer like that goes on quite nice. Yeah, probably not very usable. So even though that's probably still drying, let's take a look at the other side. None of it's really gone through onto this scrap paper, but I'm not sure how well you can see in this lighting. It has obviously wrinkled the page a little bit here, here and here, basically everywhere we had watercolour. It's actually better than I thought. I mean, to touch this bit here, it's still wet, but it is rippling the page. It's not ideal, but it is better than I expected. And last of all, one of the things I was most looking forward to testing is some Copic markers. So this will obviously give the same effect for whichever kind of alcohol markers you use. So again, I'm putting a fairly generous layer down, trying to use some sort of similar-ish colours to be able to blend. And yeah, deliberately going into the colours. I actually quite like cell shading with markers, but this way we are really testing the book, seeing how well it can hold up. And also it shows us whether you can blend on it. I'm not the best at blending with markers, even on marker paper. To be honest though, that's actually stood up a lot better than I was expecting. Let me hold that up to the camera. It is going to depend how many layers you apply, but I would say that actually has worked much better than the watercolor pens. However, it has definitely gone through. I think you actually could get away with a layer of marker on this one, which is pretty cool. Okay, so there you have it. Those are our tests. I think I've covered enough mediums there. I can't really think of what else to use. So last of all, I'm just going to give my sort of closing thoughts on this, my opinion, whilst I doodle away in the background. I'm just drawing some hands here, so I know it's nothing overly exciting to watch. But I couldn't decide on what to draw and I need to improve my hands. And that's what I intend to use this sketchbook for mainly, so I thought it'd be a pretty cool idea. I'm actually using a Biro pen for this. I prefer working with like graphite pencil, but it doesn't always show up on camera very well. So I thought just for the sake of the camera, I'll use something a little bit darker. It does mean when I make mistakes with proportions and things like that, I couldn't really fix them, and yeah, there are plenty of mistakes, but hey, that's what a sketchbook's for. By the way, if you do want to see more of my scribbles, make sure that you follow me on social media. I will put links in the description box below. And as already mentioned, I'll put links to all the products I use in the description box too. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but the pages are very clean white, so they're not yellowed at all like a lot of sketchbooks are. As mentioned at the beginning, it does say 128 sheets, but it definitely is not. It's 64 sheets. I'm pretty sure it means 128 pages, so don't let that fool you. That being said, that's still a decent amount, so don't let it put you off too much. You saw with the wetter mediums, the watercolours, that they do warp the page a little bit. Part of me thinks you could get away with a very light layer, but the sketchbook is intended for dry media, so just remember that. The Ecoline pens did seem to start bringing the page up quite quickly. Watercolours didn't bleed through though, which is pretty cool. The alcohol markers, on the other hand, did bleed through one layer, but they didn't warp the page, and they even seemed to blend, which I wasn't expecting on this kind of paper, so I was actually quite impressed with them. Again, I think you actually could use alcohol markers in this, but probably only for, you know, a quick layer on some of your sketches, so nothing too extreme. So let me know if you've got any questions about it, or if there's anything that I've missed, just leave me a comment below. Also, I'd love to do more sort of product reviews like this, reviewing sketchbooks and things, so if you guys have got any suggestions of any particular product, do let me know. I'm thinking I'll do a review next of that Talons sketchbook shown at the beginning. That one is apparently quite good for watercolour, so I've got high hopes for that one, so stay tuned. If you did like this video or you found it useful, please do consider subscribing to the channel, it helps me out a lot. And of course, hit that thumbs up button and switch notifications on for future content. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.